Hi everyone, Katrina Stratton, Occupational Therapist at Spectrios Institute for Low Vision here, and I'm coming to you today from my kitchen. We are going to be talking about contrast in the kitchen, how to use contrast to make those everyday activities that happen in a kitchen a little bit easier for people with vision loss. So contrast is one of the major tools that we use in low vision rehabilitation, because you can change the contrast of any task that you're looking at. So when I say contrast, I want you to sort of think about the color wheel, for instance, or black and white. Black and white have excellent contrast with one another. Black, like I'm wearing, stands out really well against white, a very light color. It also stands out very well against something like yellow, Spectrios's favorite color. Our little house of hope is also yellow because we like to use yellow as contrast enhancement as well. So black and white, black and yellow have great contrast. If you think about the color wheel, things that don't have good contrast, colors that stand next to each other on the color wheel. For example, blue and green do not have very good contrast. Red and yellow, red and orange don't have very good contrast, but green or blue and yellow have better contrast because they're farther apart from one another on the color wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of examples of good or bad contrast in the kitchen. Hopefully it will give you a sense of what I mean by changing the contrast of a task to make it a little bit easier. So my first example of a kitchen task where you can control the contrast of the activity itself is pouring coffee. So coffee is dark, it's a very dark brown, and as you might imagine, it is not going to have very good contrast with my mug on the right here. I have a dark navy mug that it will be very hard to see the coffee when I pour it into the mug. On the left, I have a mug with a white inside, and a white background or a white inside of a cup will have much better contrast with the dark coffee. So I'm just going to take my coffee from the side here and I'll pour a little bit into my navy mug. And because I am standing here, can see a little bit of the shimmer of the coffee, but I can't quite tell where the level is. But if I pour the coffee into my white mug on the left here, it is much easier to see that round disc of coffee in the bottom. Dark coffee has good contrast with a mug with a white or a light inside. Now, what if we consider chopping vegetables for our meals or our snacks, or fruits for that matter? A lot of people have wooden cutting boards, which are great. They can come in a variety of shades, light to dark. I have these nice plastic cutting boards that I have one featured right now. I told you before that Spectrios is quite fond of yellow, and you will see why in just a second, or I will explain why in just a second. I have a red onion on my yellow cutting board here, and if I were to cut into this, you can even tell just from it now that it stands out pretty well against the yellow. A nice dark purple has good contrast with my yellow cutting board. So if I were to cut this onion, I would much prefer to cut it on a yellow cutting board or a light cutting board that the dark purple is going to stand out well against. Now, to contrast that, I also have a mango. Now, the mango skin stands out very well against my dark cutting board because it's a dark green, against my yellow cutting board, because it's a dark green and kind of a dark red at the top here. So the skin stands out well. But if you know very much about mangoes, you know that the inside is yellow. And thus, once I get to the inside, it's not going to stand out very well against my yellow cutting board. You can maybe see in my hand here that I have a little piece of mango, and you may have not even noticed that it was sitting on my yellow cutting board because it blends in so much. If I were going to cut a mango, what I actually might prefer to use would be something like a dark brown, a dark green, a black, or even a dark wood cutting board. If you look to the left here, you can see my mango on my dark placemat that I have sitting underneath my yellow cutting board, just to give you a visual of how much better it stands out against the brown as compared to the yellow cutting board. So by now you might be thinking, well, what about when I go to eat? How can I control the contrast of that particular activity? Well, my recommendation would be to use solid colored plates. I actually don't even have any patterned plates to show you, but the idea is that a simple white background creates a nice blank slate. A beautiful patterned plate creates some busyness and some noise in the background of whatever is on top of it. So the first recommendation is simple design of a plate. My plates have a border around them. I have yellow and I have kind of a dark green or a green of sorts. And I have them on top of a brown placemat here to show you sort of the different contrasts. My preference of the two is the yellow, as you might have guessed, because the yellow stands out just a touch better from the brown. Now the green is not bad because it is a light green and it has better contrast with the white of the center of the plate. So both of these are fairly good options for eating from. Now you will notice that the plate is white. So not all foods are going to stand out particularly well against white, but most will, which is why that is my first recommendation. And I have a brown placemat behind it to kind of do the same thing, create a very solid colored, reduce the visual noise sort of background. In terms of foods that will not stand out well against a white plate, think about your white foods. Mashed potatoes without gravy won't stand out very well, and white rice is not going to have good contrast with a white plate, but green beans would have great contrast. And even a red pepper or a tomato-based something is going to have good contrast with a white plate over a dark plate. If you're a person that eats a lot of cereal, for instance, because we eat our cereal with white milk, what you might want to consider doing is having one dark bowl. And if I had one, I would show you, but a dark bowl, the white milk will stand out better against that. So hopefully these are a few good tips for you in how to control the contrast in your kitchen and eating area. Thanks for watching.